Chloe Matthews had always felt it, that persistent sensation of having lived before, of knowing things she shouldn't know. As a librarian at the University of Virginia's Special Collections, she'd spent 15 years surrounded by rare texts and forgotten knowledge, but nothing had prepared her for what she discovered that autumn morning in Charlottesville. The leather-bound manuscript had arrived in an unmarked crate among a donation from an anonymous collector. Unlike the other volumes, this one bore no catalogue number, no acquisition date, just a simple inscription on its spine in faded gold lettering: The Continuance of Souls. Another late night, Chloe. Oliver Reed appeared at her office doorway, coffee in hand. As the department's historical consultant, he often worked alongside her on unusual acquisitions. "Something about this one, Oliver," she replied, not looking up from the pages. "I can't explain it, but it feels familiar." Oliver set the coffee beside her and peered over her shoulder. 18th century binding, but the text inside appears much older. Sanskrit origins, perhaps. Interesting that it's been translated to English. Chloe nodded absently, her fingers tracing words that seemed to pulse beneath her touch. The soul returns not by cosmic demand, but by its own unfinished symphony. What binds one to the wheel is not punishment, but purpose unfulfilled. It reads, "Like a direct commentary on reincarnation," Oliver observed, "but different from Eastern traditions. More directive. It's similar to Edgar Cayce's readings," Chloe whispered, a chill running down her spine. "But this predates him by centuries." As the afternoon sun slanted through tall windows, casting the reading room in amber light, Chloe continued translating passages that described soul agreements, karmic patterns, and the specific reasons why souls chose to return. Unlike other texts on reincarnation she'd studied, this one didn't speak in generalities. It outlined precise spiritual mechanisms, as if written by someone with intimate knowledge of the process. That night, in her small Victorian apartment, just off campus, Chloe dreamed of a stone chamber illuminated by oil lamps. She stood watching robed figures carefully transcribing text onto parchment. Though she couldn't understand their spoken language, she comprehended perfectly the words they wrote, the very same passages she'd read that day. She awoke with a start at 3:33 a.m., her heart racing. Without thinking, she reached for her phone and called Oliver. "I need to tell you something," she said when he answered, his voice thick with sleep. "I think I knew about this text before. Not in this life, but before. Chloe, it's the middle of the night. The manuscript mentions a meditation technique to access past life memories," she continued, unable to contain herself. "I'm going to try it." Oliver's tone shifted from annoyed to concerned. "Wait, you don't know what effect that could have." Cayce himself warned about unprepared consciousness attempting to access other incarnations. "That's just it, Oliver. I think I helped write it. In another life." The silence on the other end stretched until Oliver finally spoke. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't do anything until I arrive." As dawn broke over the Blue Ridge Mountains, Chloe sat cross-legged on her living room floor, the manuscript open before her while Oliver watched nervously from the sofa. She had followed the text's instructions: controlled breathing, visualization of a spiraling staircase descending into darkness, and repetition of a phrase that felt ancient on her tongue. Nothing happened at first. Then a pressure began building behind her forehead, not painful, but intense. Colors swirled behind her closed eyelids, and suddenly, with startling clarity, she was elsewhere. A woman named Eliza in 1850s New England, working feverishly by candlelight to transcribe an ancient text before it could be destroyed by those who feared its revelations. When she opened her eyes, tears streamed down her face. "What happened?" Oliver asked, now kneeling beside her. "We've been trying to preserve this knowledge across lifetimes," she whispered, "and we're not the only ones." The following weeks transformed Chloe's understanding of her seemingly ordinary life. The manuscript revealed that souls remained tethered to physical existence, not through punishment or spiritual ignorance, but through unresolved soul purposes, what Cayce would later call soul agreements. "It's not about karma in the way most people think," Chloe explained to Oliver as they worked after hours in the university's empty reading room. "It's about completion. The manuscript says we keep incarnating because we've made promises, to ourselves, to others, to the greater consciousness." Oliver looked up from his notes. "That aligns with what Cayce said about soul groups incarnating together across time to work out specific patterns." "Exactly. But this text goes deeper. It outlines specific techniques to identify those patterns and potentially resolve them within a single lifetime. Chloe's fingers traced a diagram in the book that resembled a spiraling DNA strand intertwined with symbols she now recognized as representing emotional states. Since that first meditation, Chloe had experienced 5 more past life memories, each one connected to the manuscript or similar teachings. In one, she died protecting sacred texts during the burning of the Library of Alexandria. In another, she worked alongside a younger Edgar Cayce, helping document his readings. The connections were too specific, too detailed to dismiss. What troubled her most, however, was the recurring presence of adversaries, individuals who appeared in lifetime after lifetime, seemingly determined to suppress this knowledge. Have you ever wondered why certain spiritual teachings get systematically eradicated throughout history? She asked Oliver. This text suggests it's not random. Some souls incarnate specifically to prevent this awareness from spreading. Oliver's expression darkened. And you think they're still active today? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The manuscript doesn't belong in the open. Some doors should remain closed. She showed it to Oliver, whose face paled. How would anyone even know about it? We haven't catalogued it yet. That evening, returning to her apartment, Chloe immediately sensed something was wrong. Nothing was visibly disturbed, but the air felt different, charged as if someone had filled the space with their intentions. On her kitchen table lay a small origami crane that hadn't been there when she left. She called Oliver immediately. "Someone's been in my apartment. Pack a bag," he said without hesitation. "You're staying at my place tonight." At Oliver's sprawling farmhouse outside Charlottesville, they spread the manuscript pages across his dining table, working frantically to document everything. If someone was after the text, they needed to preserve its contents. "Look at this passage," Oliver said, pointing to a section they hadn't fully translated. "The cycle breaks not through escape, but through confrontation. When the keeper meets the seeker across the divide of lives, only then may both find release." The keeper and the seeker, Chloe repeated, a memory surfacing from one of her visions. Those were titles, roles that souls took on. The keeper protects the knowledge, and the seeker tries to destroy it, Oliver suggested. Chloe shook her head slowly, a deeper understanding dawning. No, the seeker tries to claim it for themselves alone. They believe the knowledge gives power that shouldn't be shared widely. That night, Chloe dreamed of a temple high in snow-covered mountains. She watched as a younger version of herself stood before a council of elders, taking a solemn vow. "I will carry this wisdom through the ages, across the veil of forgetting, until all souls understand the purpose of their return." Across from her stood a familiar figure opposing her oath, a soul she knew intimately, whose eyes now reflected determination rather than love. With a jolt of recognition that transcended time, she realized she was looking at Oliver. She woke with a gasp to find Oliver standing in her doorway, backlit by the hallway light. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice unnaturally calm. Chloe's heart raced as pieces fell into place. His convenient appearance in her department just months before the manuscript arrived, his excessive interest in her progress, the way he'd insisted she stay at his isolated home. "Just a dream," she lied, reaching casually for her phone on the nightstand. "About the past." "Which one?" Oliver stepped into the room. "Alexandria? New England? Or perhaps Tibet, where you first betrayed our order by seeking to reveal what was meant for the worthy few?" In that moment, Chloe understood. They had played these roles before, keeper and seeker, across many lifetimes. The manuscript hadn't randomly appeared, it had been an elaborate setup to continue their ancient conflict. "This ends now, Oliver," she said, rising from the bed. "The cycle, the manuscript explains how we break free. By surrendering the knowledge," he countered, "return it to those who understand its proper use. No, by sharing it together. That's what you never understood. The text isn't about hoarding wisdom or controlling reincarnation. It's about collective awakening." For a moment, something flickered in Oliver's eyes. Recognition, perhaps even longing. Then his expression hardened once more. "You've always been idealistic, Chloe, across every lifetime." Dawn broke over the Virginia countryside as Chloe and Oliver circled each other in emotional standoff. The manuscript pages lay scattered between them on the living room floor, like fallen leaves of an ancient tree of knowledge. "How many times have we done this?" Chloe asked quietly. "How many lives have we spent locked in the same conflict?" Oliver's laugh was bitter. "Hundreds. I've remembered more than you. In Greece, you were a priestess who stole temple secrets. In Renaissance Italy, You published esoteric texts meant only for initiates, always believing everyone deserves access to sacred knowledge. And you've always tried to control it, she countered. The manuscript itself says the knowledge was never meant to be hoarded. It was meant to be protected, Oliver's voice rose. Do you have any idea what happens when spiritual power falls into unprepared hands? I've seen civilizations tear themselves apart with it. Something in his pain resonated with Chloe, not from this life, but from shared history spanning centuries. For the first time, she truly understood his perspective. Show me, she said softly. Show me what you've seen. Surprised by her request, Oliver hesitated before retrieving a small wooden box from his study. Inside lay a simple crystal pendant on a silver chain. This helps access shared memories between souls, he explained. It's how our order has maintained continuity across lifetimes. As they sat facing each other, the pendant suspended between them. Chloe closed her eyes and felt herself falling through time, not into her own past lives, but into Oliver's experiences. She witnessed his anguish as sacred teachings were corrupted for personal gain, saw how knowledge meant for healing had been weaponized, felt his frustration lifetime after lifetime as humanity proved itself unprepared for deeper truths. When she opened her eyes, tears streamed down her face. I had no idea. Now you understand why some doors should remain closed, Oliver said gently. I understand your fear, she acknowledged, but I've also seen something you haven't. She took his hands. The manuscript doesn't just explain why. We reincarnate. It shows how to transcend the cycle altogether, not by escaping it, but by completing our soul missions. Reluctantly, Oliver allowed her to guide him through the meditation technique she'd discovered in the text. Together, they accessed a shared memory neither had confronted before, their first meeting thousands of years earlier, when they had made a soul agreement to bring balance to how spiritual knowledge would be preserved and shared. They weren't adversaries, they were counterbalances, two halves of a spiritual equation meant to work in harmony. The Keeper and the Seeker were never meant to oppose each other, but to create dynamic tension that refined the wisdom through ages. As morning light filled the room, their perspectives had fundamentally shifted. The manuscript hadn't appeared by chance. It had manifested precisely when they were both ready to understand its deepest message. Over the following months, Chloe and Oliver carefully translated the entire text, reconciling its teachings with Edgar Cayce's readings and other spiritual traditions. They discovered the manuscript contained not only explanations for why souls reincarnate, but practical techniques for resolving soul agreements and karma within a single lifetime. The core revelation was both simple and profound. Souls return not because they're forced to, but because they choose to complete what they've begun. Reincarnation wasn't a punishment, but a profound gift, multiple opportunities to fulfill soul purposes until they reached completion. The forbidden aspect was never the knowledge itself, Chloe explained to a small gathering of serious spiritual seekers they had carefully selected. It was the attempted control of how and when souls could access their own wisdom. Oliver nodded. For centuries, spiritual hierarchies have claimed authority over this information, but the manuscript makes clear that each soul has the inherent right to understand its own journey. Together, they established the Continuance Foundation, dedicated to helping people identify and resolve their own soul patterns. Rather than publishing the manuscript widely, as Chloe might once have done, or keeping it completely hidden, as Oliver would have preferred, they found middle ground, making its core teachings available to those genuinely seeking while protecting its most powerful techniques from potential misuse. Late one evening in the Foundation's library, Chloe looked up from her work to find Oliver watching her with a peculiar expression. "What is it?" she asked. "I was just thinking about how many lifetimes we spent working against each other," he said. "All that wasted time." "Not wasted," she corrected gently. "Necessary. We both needed to understand both sides fully. The Keeper needed to learn trust, and the Seeker needed to learn responsibility." Oliver smiled. "And now? Now we've completed one cycle and begun another," Chloe said, returning to the ancient text before her. "But this time we do it together." In dreams that night, Chloe saw countless souls, some she recognized across lifetimes, others she had yet to meet, all connected by shimmering threads of purpose and promise. She understood then what Edgar Cayce had meant when he spoke of soul groups journeying together across the tapestry of time. The manuscript had never been forbidden because its knowledge was dangerous. It had been hidden because its truth was revolutionary. that souls return by choice until they complete what they've begun, that karma is not punishment but opportunity, and that the wheel of reincarnation turns not by cosmic mandate, but by the free will of souls seeking to fulfill their deepest purposes. And in that understanding lay the key to transcendence.